That's the option 1-3.
We welcome you into another Volaire video. I'm Jack Penning. These videos, of course, produced by Alex Lynch, the best in the business at Gen XI Productions. We've been through many of the airline networks in our series Zoomin with Volaire. We've had Director of Air Service Development Will Birchelman join me for several episodes to this point. We've talked about American and Alaska and United and the low-cost carriers. We've talked about small community air service. This week, we talk about Delta Airlines, the airline that may be best positioned to survive this whole pandemic, at least relatively intact. But they've got some hubs that are close to each other, and they have a big fight on their hands in the Pacific Northwest. Will is joining me now to break it down. Delta has obviously the huge gorilla of a hub in Atlanta. Nothing's happening to Atlanta. Delta has a unique network, though, because it, unlike United or even American, where there are hubs in these giant metro areas, Delta has hubs in secondary metro areas. And I don't mean to say, that the metro areas aren't large and they're not important, but you have Minneapolis, St. Paul, and you have Salt Lake City. You have Detroit that's next to Minnie. You've got Seattle, where you have a massive fight going on before this all started with Alaska. It seems that if you're a network planner at Delta, you maybe have more moving pieces than network planners at other carriers.
What happens to the likes of Detroit versus Minneapolis? Because as you say, Jack, they're both mid-sized cities if we go by population, and they're also located very closely to each other geographically. Now, what makes it such a tough call is that both markets are relatively equal in size. Now, if you look at it based on revenue and PDU, Minneapolis is the slight, beats Detroit just by an edge in terms of PDU, and by PDU I'm talking hundreds of passengers. However, it has just a little bit less revenue than Detroit does. Detroit is a higher revenue market, but again, really only by a very small edge. I mean, I think we're talking to the tune of a couple 100,000 PDUs a day. So, if we go with let's say the world is coming to an end and Delta has to actually close a hub and there's no choice in the matter, my pick would be Minneapolis. Now, I know everyone's going to say, well, why? Of course it can't be Minneapolis. Why? It would be Detroit. But I think we have to think in terms of what the hubs do in each network. Both hubs play a very similar role. Minneapolis, where Minneapolis stands out, is it serves a lot of markets in the upper Midwest that Detroit doesn't serve and other airlines don't serve. But those O&Ds just aren't large enough in my mind to justify keeping the entire hub open. And that's if we were going into this doomsday scenario. I also think that Detroit has a long established history of service to Asia. And while Minneapolis could certainly play that role, I think if for no other reason than its geographic proximity, Minneapolis is that much farther north that if you're gonna create efficiency, you probably would just stick with Detroit. But having said all that, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Delta continues to hold on to Minneapolis and Detroit.
So the other thing we have to talk about with Delta is Seattle. They have come in, grown market share incredibly in just a matter of a few years, but Seattle is designed to connect to Asia. We know international traffic is probably going to be suppressed for some time, multiple years. Is that investment wise right now? Do you shrink Seattle, or do you try to really put it to Alaska, hoping that Alaska is wounded, even mortally wounded, by what's going on now?
Well, I don't think they're going to be mortally wounded because of their impending tie-up with American. I think that's going to work wonders for both carriers. But again, if we're talking doomsday scenario here, I think you'd have to really wonder if competing in Seattle is the right strategy. And of course, going into this crisis, it was absolutely the right strategy. Delta was building a hub to flow traffic over to its Asian network. But if we're to the point where we're having to make decisions about closing hubs, Delta can flow at least a good part of that traffic over Detroit. Now, you're not going to get traffic, from Denver and points west. That just wouldn't be very. It would be overly circuitous. You're not going to just capture that share. But I think we're the large population centers around the country. Detroit could serve that purpose if it had to. But again, I don't see Delta fundamentally pulling back from Seattle. I think that, just as in their other hubs, that we may see some growth, or sorry, we may see some short-term retraction, but it will be short-term, because I personally think that there's so much negativity on the news about what's going on with this virus, and if we look at 12 months from now, I think the whole world could change by then, and probably for the better. And in that vein, I think that this virus has just simply made carriers press pause. But I think if I'm Delta, I continue to pursue that Seattle strategy.
Again, thanks to Will for taking time out to sit down and talk about this with me. We just want to make sure that you have the best possible information moving forward to help you plan what the rest of the year looks like. And I think that's the big key. There's going to be a lot of work to do. And of course, we're always here to help you. We appreciate you watching, and stay safe.